We ask ourselves, how did this happen? How did this happen to the Clippers? In a matter of the last couple of days, the Clippers lost two of the most important games of their season this season, and it came in bad fashion. You lose to the Timberwolves with Patrick Beverley celebrating on your loss and the Timberwolves victory, which the Timberwolves host the Clippers, and the Clippers found a way to lose that game with Paul George and a more veteran seasoned group, and a group that I thought that should have beat the Timberwolves. And a lot of people pick the Clippers to beat the Timberwolves simply because of the Timberwolves' lack of experience in regards to the playoffs, and the Timberwolves just, not being as experienced as the Clippers, and the Clippers being the team that's been in the playoffs in tough, rugged situations. You thought they would find a way to come through, but they didn't, and that was a terrifying loss for the Clippers because that could have put them in the 7th seed. They could have faced Memphis, as I said a few videos ago. That would have been a better matchup for them anyway, rather than going against the Phoenix Suns, especially shorthanded without Kawhi Leonard, because they came short against the Phoenix Suns last year without Kawhi Leonard, and they had Paul George and they had Patrick Beverley actually. So they still came up short. So regardless, I think they needed Kawhi Leonard anyway to beat the Phoenix Suns. But making it to the actual playoffs would have been better than actually find themselves at home. But then on top of that, the NBA world is shocked by Paul George attracting COVID, which I thought, the last couple months, you haven't heard anything about, COVID-related issues. So it seemed like everything was getting better. It seemed like everything was ascending in the right direction in regards to that. But you hear the bombshell, yesterday morning or evening or something like that about Paul George going to miss the game because of COVID-related issues. And that really gave the Pelicans, the upper hand, even though it was a tough battle, against the Pelicans last night. But at the same time, the Pelicans found a way to get the victory. The Clippers did have the game, though. The Clippers, they got going at some point, in that third quarter where they really took over going into the fourth. They had a lead. They had the game right where they wanted it, and they had the Pelicans on their heels. But for some reason, they just didn't find a way to close it. And, I'm kind of shocked by that in regards to, Ty Lue and that team and all the veteran leadership they have on that team. You would think they would be able to close a game like that out at home, knowing the type of pressure they're under, and knowing that, the Pelicans are a team that they can beat, and knowing that they had a lead going into the fourth quarter to beat the Pelicans. They had the Pelicans right where they wanted them, but they just didn't finish them off. The Pelicans were the more resilient group. They actually played like the Clippers usually play last night. They play like more of the resilient next man up mentality type team. They actually kind of grabbed that title from the Clippers just last night, just on the strength of what you saw. And them being backed in the corner, they fought their way out and they found a way to get the victory. Shout out to Brandon Ingram. He played really good. He played like the best player on that team last night, actually. So you got to give him credit. Even without Zion, they find a way to get to the 8th seed into the playoffs. And, big trade acquisition in CJ McCollum, who definitely came in there showing veteran leadership, who played very well. Got some contributions from other players on the team, and got to give them credit for what they've done. But when you think about how, last night's game ended, for the Clippers, it just really, really, hurt the team because, this was an opportunity for them. This is their second opportunity to get into the playoffs. The play-in tournament seems very, very fruitful for a lot of teams because, if you're a certain seed, like you're the 7th or 8th seed, you could lose the first game and then have opportunity to still get in the second play-in tournament game. And that was the case for the Clippers, and they found a way to lose both games, one with Paul George, one without Paul George. And, as resilient as the Clippers were throughout the season, you just kind of felt like, they were going to find a way to get into the playoffs regardless of, who they had to face, after they lost to the Timberwolves. But the Paul George news was huge, but I still think the Clippers could have won the game last night against the Pelicans because, like I said, they had a lead going into the fourth quarter. That third quarter, they really erupted as a team, played a lot better offensively and everything. Got the game where they wanted it. Marcus Morris was hitting shots. Reggie Jackson started hitting some big shots, and they start playing, more of their style of basketball, and that the crowd was in it and everything like that. Steve Ballmer was definitely, cheering them on and stuff like that. Even Kawhi Leonard was there watching his team play, had his team back, trying to sit there and be supportive, being on the sideline, but, it just wasn't enough. And the season just came down to, them losing to the Pelicans and, ending in bad fashion for them. But at the same time, as I said before, you can't let opportunities squander away. And as I said a couple videos ago, when they played the Timberwolves, you got to find a way to go out there and beat the Timberwolves. You got to find a way to go out there and handle business, because losing a game like that where Ty Lue could have made some more adjustments, where, of course, you can say they could have played better, all those things. I don't want to get into all that, because that shoulda, woulda, coulda, and they didn't. But regardless, this is my point. You have to take care of business when it's time to do so. If they would have found a way to take care of that game, they wouldn't be in this predicament. Of course, maybe Paul George still would have got COVID possibly, but they still would be in the playoffs. They still would be in a 7-game series, which they would have had time to get PG back. And, they would have had time, for possibly get Kawhi Leonard back too, because like I said, the notion was projected for Kawhi to come back, somewhere in the first round. I said he probably would come back around game 2 or game 3 of the first round if he was going to make a return. And I definitely think he would have, because he was pushing so hard to get there. And I definitely think he wanted to come back and fight with this team and be a part of this team's culture going forward, and actually be the commander of the culture going forward by helping them win a championship possibly this season. But that didn't happen because they found a way to lose 2 important games that really they should have won with or without Kawhi and PG, because they've beaten better teams in the regular season than both of the teams they lost to in the play-in tournament. They've beaten way better teams than the Timberwolves. They've beaten way better teams than the Pelicans without Kawhi and PG this season. They have. I mean, it's no doubt about it. So regardless, you thought they might find a way to pull it out. I did think that the huge underrated loss that they had going into this play-in tournament without Luke Kennard, I really thought that was a huge underrated X factor loss, because he's one of those players I feel like, with the Clippers, he comes out and gives them that energy, and he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. So I definitely think he could have made their offense a lot more lethal, as he usually does when he steps on the floor. So not having him, I really think it hurt them a whole lot. Honestly, I think if they had Luke Kennard, I think they would have won against the Timberwolves. That's just my opinion. They definitely would have beat the Pelicans, but I feel like they would have won against the Timberwolves if they had Luke Kennard there with PG and Norman Powell and the rest of the crew, because Luke Kennard is that X factor to me. He's almost like that unsung hero for them. He's hit a lot of big shots for them, made a lot of big shots, never been scared of the moment, always had a fearless attitude, and he is a marksman from 3, and he's fearless, and he's one of those guys that come off the bench that's a role player that plays out of his role sometimes. Sometimes he plays beyond his role, so he stepped in and knocked down a lot of big shots and, won a lot of help. The Clippers won a lot of games this season. It wasn't just Reggie Jackson. It was a lot of Luke Kennard too, even though a lot of people don't want to give Luke that credit. But he definitely was a big vital piece to what they were doing this season, and a big vital piece to a lot of the comebacks they had this season, where they were down 20 plus points, in one game down 35 points. He hits a big shot at the end, big game-winning shot against the Lakers. He was one of their unsung heroes, but he was actually clutch for them. So I feel like that was a huge loss for the Clippers going into the play-in tournament, not having somebody like him who can change the trajectory on offense for them because of his 3-point shooting perfection that he does from 3-point arc. So it's really disappointing how it is at the moment in time, but it is what it is right now. The Clippers just they have to just regroup. They have to just kind of try to figure out going into the next season what needs to be done. But like I said, you can sit here and talk about shoulda, woulda, coulda, but they lost 2 of the most important games of their season, which was in the play-in tournament, which everybody, including myself, I feel like thought the Clippers would find a way out the play-in tournament. As I said before, I thought they would beat the Timberwolves, and They didn't, but at the same time, it's just how the dice falls sometimes. You can't predict the future. You can't predict how the outcome is. It just, landed this way, and it was meant to be this way, even though it doesn't feel right, because now you're looking at both LA teams. Neither one is in the playoffs, and it's just, a really unsecure feel going into the playoffs without either LA team or both LA teams being a part of it. It just doesn't even seem right, It's bad times for the city of LA in regards to basketball, or should I say professional basketball, because both teams are eliminated. Both teams are not in contention. And, just for the Clippers' sake, they fought so hard this year, throughout the adversity, and not having Kawhi and PG, and not being talked about by the good things they did do as a team without their superstars. They finally got some flowers at the end of the season, but it wasn't really enough, because I thought they played really, good for a team who had a lot less, and other teams had more, but they found a way to, sustain with what they had and keep fighting. And last night, against the Pelicans, it just seemed like at the end, they couldn't fight anymore. They done all they could do. At some point, as I always say, you can only overcome injuries, but for so long. You can't do it forever. At some point, you just need your main players there, and you need people. You need your home run hitters at some point. That's just the way it goes. And the Clippers had neither one of their home run hitters, but even without that, they still had a chance to win, but they didn't. And, hey, it's just move on to the next season and see how the outcome is there. But hey, that's my take on everything. Leave any comments in the comment section. As always, like, subscribe, and hey, Khaliis out.